console to actually zero in on a particular object,
It is. It is.
affect its position and all that sort of thing?
Definitely, and we'll do it right now. The thing is that if you have a lot of objects that comes from the same section, it might be painful to get through them. Like say you have 200 ships and not just one, it's going to be hard to get to the number 86, for example, because what you can do is go through the list one by one. So if they have unique config name, that's much easier. Like for example, let's find you see that there are blue walls on my screen. There are 4 of them, and they all have different names. There's wall 0, wall 1, wall 2, wall 3. So what we can do is object, and if we type object.f, there's actually a command, a command called object find next, and we're going to give it name. Oh, first we're going to see the prototype. You see the prototype is you give it a string, you give it a name. By default, it's a star, which means the first object, no matter what the name is. And then the second optional parameter is a previous object. So if you give it an ID, it will get the next object of the same type than the first one. So if you don't give anything, it will get the first one. So if I do object find next and I type wall 0, there's no wall 0 apparently, so wall 1. Yeah, it's wall 1, 2, 3, and 4 then. You see that I get an ID which is 0x00007000EF. That's a GUID of the wall 1 object. And with this GUID, I can modify this object at runtime. So like for example, let's give it a speed. So object set speed. Here, if I press tab, it will repeat the last result. So that's very handy sometimes because the last result is a GUID of my object. So instead of typing that, I just press tab and it will complete it. So object set speed of that object, which is a wall 1 we just retrieved, and I'm going to give it like 100 pixel horizontal. And you will see that one of the objects is starting to move and is going away. Bye bye.
Okay, so instead of having to use the whole push and pop thing, you can use the GUIDs.
Yes, the push and pop is handy to retrieve the GUIDs, just like I'm using tab to retrieve the last result. But like for example, if I want to find the wall 2, I can push it, object.find next. I'm going to push wall 2, and now I can pull it too. So object set angular velocity of pop. I'm giving it 90 degrees second, and you see that it's going to turn 90 degrees second. So you can still use push and pop. It's just that in the console you can use tab to retrieve the last result, which often is a GUID of the object. So all the object set function will return the GUID for that exact purpose so that you can change them easily.
Yeah, I think that's a lot easier.
It's very handy when you want to try things, like you want to move something, you want to hide something, you want to delete something, you want to scale something, you want to duplicate something. Like for example, here I have a wall 2 that's running, but I can create a new wall 2. So if I object.create, if I create a wall 2, you'll see that there's an original wall 2 that's been created exactly where the other one was. And now I can retrieve both of them. So like if I do object get find next, if I type wall 2, I will get the first one. See, that's 1CF, that's the first one. But now if I do the object find next wall 2 and I give the GUID of the first one, it will return the second one. And now I can like give an opposite angular velocity of the second one, like negative 90, and now they are turning opposite directions. So you can find any object like this, like for example, those objects that I've found, I can delete it. Let's delete the second wall 2. It's gone. And of course, because objects are hierarchies, you can create wall levels or worlds with one object create or one object delete. So you can easily, like in the game that I started earlier, which is this prototype here, where you see that there's a character on screen that can be moved and has actions and things like this, and there's a scrolling. There's actually a command that I bound to the backspace, which oh, of course I have a build that's not working with that. Maybe the debug version or the profile version is still no, I think I rebuilt it. It's too bad. Anyway, the idea was like I bound backspace to the fact that I was retrieving the root object of the scene I would delete that object and I would recreate it. So basically I'm just restarting the scene where it was, with all the characters in the original place where they were.
Okay, now the question of say persistence, like say for instance, you're working through things, you're moving things around to get an idea of positioning, because the console's great for positioning things around and getting exactly how you want them, and then rather than have to transcribe those values down into the config, can you sort of say, okay, I've changed this, now persist it in the real file? Is that possible?
That would be nice. Unfortunately, it's not as straightforward right now because the object does not serialize back to disk in the config form. We don't have this thing here in Orcs. However, scroll works like this. Like the editor of scroll works like that. It actually queries of the object you put in the editor and it will serialize all the position, rotation, all the properties. So scroll does it by hand, but Orcs does not give you anything to do for that. However, if you want to modify like config values, not of objects, but like for example the color of the sprite I'm using, or like for example, remember we have the ball, but now I don't want the ball. Like I want to say that ball graphic is the texture of the ball graphic is not ball PNG, but it's tux.webp. So now I'm spawning tux instead, and I want to keep that change. What I can do is I actually can save the config right now. So if we're going to look at the prototype of the config save, and the prototype, it takes a file name, and then you can say only origin and encrypt. So we're going to ignore the encryption because we don't need it. Only origin means that if you're giving it file names that exist, it will only save the values that were defined in that file at the beginning. Like for example, if I give it like the bounce.ini, it will only save back things that were originally defined in bounce.ini. It won't save back things that were coming from somewhere else or things that were added later on. So that's the only origin parameter. But let's say we want to save everything. So I would say config.save, and I don't know how to type apparently. Config save, and I'm going to save again toto.ini. And if I do this, it actually brought all the config, the current config in toto.ini. So if I'm going to open toto.ini, and you see that I have a few on my disk already because I always use that name. Now if you're looking for the ball graphic, you will see that the texture has been serialized as tux.webp, which is what we changed in the console itself. Whereas in the original file here, which is in bounce.ini, if we're looking for the ball graphic, you see that the texture was originally ball.png. So basically, you can retrieve the modification you made. It's just you cannot retrieve a live value of an object. But anything you modify through set arguments, you can save back to disk. So let's say, for example, you're moving an object like you want the wall 1 to be, actually I don't know where it is, so let's find the wall 1 object. So find wall 1, and now we're going to get its position, get position of this object. So we see that it's -300, -251. Let's say I want to try it 100 pixels more to the right. So I'm going to say set position, no, not set parent, set position -200, -251, and you see that it moved there. But if I were to save the config, I actually did not change the config. What I did is I changed the object's property. However, now if I were to say set wall 1 position -200, -251, and now if I were to save that config to file, if we are looking at toto.ini and we're looking for wall 1, we'll see that the position has been changed to what I set in config. So you can do it, it's just that you cannot retrieve it from the live object at that moment. There is no way that Orcs can do that at the moment, but we can add that feature later if it's interesting, serializing the current state of an object back to the config. But if you change the config directly, you can definitely save it to disk.
Right.
Mhm.
So you could feasibly you could create an editor using these sorts of things like just executing commands.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I don't want to start from the current scroll editor and I want to start again, because when scroll was written, there were no commands back then. It was like 2009, I think, and commands were not part of orcs yet. Now that we have commands, we can definitely use that. Like, for example, if we look at the code of games like even Cops, actually. Cops. If we look into the data, if we look to the config, we'll see that I have something called tracks, and all those are a lot of commands that are used for a lot of different things, like camera shakes, moving things around, like the UI. The whole UI is made with commands like this. The splash screen, all the transition, the particle effects, all are commands like that just done here, and we use that a lot. But we also use it for things like, if I go into the bin folder, and if I look at where did I put it? Dev.ini. Those are, of course, it's empty, but I have a command dev, I think. Data. Config command dev. So here all those commands are only for debug. So those are commands that I'm executing for things like, for example, this one here, the OK one. It's actually a clock that I attached to the character. This one is working because I know it in the current build it's working, so I can show you. So for example, here you can see the animation of the character. I need to do something about that camera that's moving. Let's see, camera off. It's in code, I think. Right, it doesn't matter. So you can see that the character is moving fast, but I can slow him down in time, and you can see that now it's only moving 1 frame every other seconds, or I can speed it up. And those are done by the command you can see here. It's actually finding the object. It's attaching a clock to the object, and then it's listening for the keys I pressed to first to put a text on it that says that will be the multiplier of the time, and then actually changing the time used. So those are all commands that are defined here and that I'm using for debug purposes and things like this. Like the speed up will get the time right now, will multiply the time by 2. And then it will apply the time to the clock, so all the objects linked to the clock will go twice as fast. And I have a lot of commands, as you can see here, that like the reset one, as I was it's creating an object reset. The object reset actually will run those commands. Those commands say that find in the section runtime, find the key scene, which is the GUID of the scene, delete that object, then recreate another object scene, and the clear log table is because we have a log of all the animation, and just clear the log as well. So when the reset object is created, that's what it's going to do. It's going to find the scene, delete the scene, create a new scene again. And that object will self-delete itself after 0.1 seconds. So it's an object that will just basically restart the scene, the current scene. So it's very easy to play the game and just restart and pick up from where we were. I have the zone debugs as well. I can display like the zones. I have a lot of commands for a lot of development purposes. Like frame debug as well. I can display the actual frame animation, because we were doing pixel perfect and a lot of tricky framework. So I wanted to display the exact frame used. And so that's done entirely with a command here, and an object that's created on the fly, and the code has no idea that it exists, the game has no idea. It's only defined in the command dev.ini.
That is actually handy,
Yeah, it means that...
Exact walk animation, I used to have to count, I used to just have to slow the animation down, count how many frames, and yes, that would have been quite...
Yeah, definitely. All you have to do, like you can see here. Oh, that's an alias, for example. Let's see. Here, there's a console section, and you can see that I says k equals. Actually, when it's a key that it does not know, it